Okay, today I am interviewing my brother, Rich Walton. He spent much of his working career in the pharmaceutical industry, and his particular job niche was the supply chain. Now he works for a government agency called the Administration for Strategic Preparedness and Response, or ASPR. Does that have like a way you pronounce that, like aspirate or anything?
ASPR. That's exactly.
ASPR. Okay. As a supply chain consultant with ASPR. So ASPR leads the nation's medical and public health preparedness for, response to, and recovery from disasters and public health emergencies. And we've had a few of those. Just saying. Just saying.
One
So
or two.
ASPR, you can tell I'm reading this right from the copy. ASPR constantly scans the horizon to prepare for whatever emergency may come next. This emergency, whether natural or man-made. We've never seen those either. So I'll put their website in the link below for you all to read. So that is a tall order, Rich. We're going to talk today about the pharmaceutical industry. And just to let you know, people want to know about China. They want to know about China and pharmaceuticals. And so we have to make sure we talk about that. So I want to start off just in general, for you to tell me about the pharmaceutical industry, just because people need a bit of an overview. Not that they need to know everything there is to know about big pharma, but I've read things like China owns 90% of US antibiotic market, and that China owns about 80% of active pharmaceutical ingredients used in American drugs, giving the CCP just about absolute control of potentially life-saving medicine. So, we can start up. You need to talk to me just about how supply chain works and about the pharmaceutical industry, and then we can launch into, how true is this, what I just said. So just start talking, and you have much more to say than I do.
Okay. First, before we get too far into it, I just want to make a couple of disclaimers perfectly clear. I'm speaking to you today not as a spokesperson or representative of the federal government or my agency or the Department of Health and Human Services or anything like that.
I meant to say that.
I just all going on there.
Right. This is you talking, not the government talking.
Exactly. And I hope that my 40 years of experience in the pharmaceutical industry and supply chain will bring some interesting input or perspective to the topic. Also, just so you know, what is going to be offered or spoken of is nothing to do with any inside information or any government protected information. These are things that.
You mean you don't have things to say to me that no one else knows?
No, I don't. If I do, there may be ramifications, but no, I do not.
Okay.
So,
all right.
So
I
just
thought
so
I was going to get an inside track, but whatever.
So everybody's clear on that.
Yeah.
Now, so most of what's being published or being talked about and read about and spread about China and their influence in the pharmaceutical market is statistically true, which means it really depends on how you look at it. I haven't seen anything that is just broadly and bold-faced inaccurate. So,
in order that they own that much of pharma around the world, and particularly in the U.S.
Right. And to understand how that happened, why that happened, and whether or not it's a concern is means to have to understand a little bit about pharmaceuticals and what happens with pharmaceuticals.
Okay. Yeah, let's do that.
So most pharmaceuticals start with something called, and there's several names for it. There's precursor, there's base product, there's prime ingredient, those kinds of words that are used to describe things that are mined, grown and harvested, or synthesized in a lab at a molecular level.
So these are the component parts that they use in the recipe.
Right. And they are put together into one of probably two things. Let's talk generally. Yeah. So would be what you referred to earlier as active pharmaceutical ingredients. Most of the trade would refer to those by their acronym of APIs. When you're talking about talking to a pharmaceutical company or pharmaceutical rep, those are APIs, and those are largely what the medicine we're talking about is known for. I am type 2 diabetic. I take metformin. The metformin, as a tablet, has in it an API that is metformin. It's the medicine that's in there. And then there's other things in there that are inactives, or sometimes they're called excipients. They are binders, colors, flavors, and sometimes assist to the delivery mechanism of the medicine.
They can
So
use to make it stay together as a tablet or to dispense in a certain way in your digestive system.
correct. Or, very, very simply to give it a color or to give it a flavor. If it's a tablet that sits in your mouth for a little bit, anything that can make it assist in the delivery of the medication to the patient.
Okay.
And just as a footnote, out of interest, I don't know if anybody asked this question or some people don't know, but the reason a lot of tablets are colored or shaped differently, or if you look at the little stamp on your tablets, on your pills,
Yeah.
those are legal, approved, registered colorants and shapes and codes with the FDA so that you can tell your pills apart.
Right. So you know which one you may have dropped or which one you're taking, which one is in your pill box.
Right. So if you're a person of my age or around that, you may have several medications, and if they were all a little white and round, you'd be like, what am I doing? So and
Right.
if by the way, as a public service, if you ever come across a pill at the bottom of your drawer in your counter, the information that will tie the code that's on the pill to the identification of what it is available online. Just got to go to Google, plug that code in there, and you'll find out what it is instantly.
Okay.
Just so you know. So anyway, these ingredients that are both active and inactive go into the medication. And we've been talking about the most common dosage form, which is a tablet. Everybody knows there's also capsules, there's also injectable liquids, there's also oral liquids, and more specialized, you have oral disintegrating tablets, such and such. So, and then all of these tablets, or whatever form the dose is in, now has to get finished, put into a bottle, put into some sort of container they can be dispensed from. It has to be labeled, has to be packaged, has to be shipped. So these stages where
And that's all
you're,
the supply chain that you've been involved in.
yeah,
All of that stuff.
for the most part, and somebody's going to say, oh, no, I know a company that does this, or I've worked here, and it's not 100%. But for the most part, over the course of time, these different stages of the mining and the blending and the synthesizing and the encapsulation or the compression or the design of the pill and the bottling and the labeling have been split apart across company lines, across domestic borders, across international borders. Because
Sort of like what happens with cars, where the engine may be poured here and then assembled here and then put in the car here.
precisely, because some of these operations are labor intensive. Some of them, frankly, are a little dirty. Depending on what you're going to manufacture, where you're putting it, you can get all kinds of residue all over the place. And some of them just it would help if you had the conversion operation close to the source of the raw material. So rather than take the raw material and try to ship it across the Pacific, let's say, and then fashion it into the dosage form and then package it, you may have some complications with trying to keep environmental properties, environmental conditions, and it'd be much easier if you were to convert it from a powder to a pill. Close.
And these are all regulated, I presume, by the
Oh
FDA.
yes. Oh yeah. In as much as the FDA has some global influence, and it does, but we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Okay.
Okay. But so you have these stages occurring, and when a company gets very, very proficient, that is to say, they can produce the material and produce it for a profit, they are rarely bound to one individual trading partner. Rarely, especially when you talk about the inactives. You know, if you've ever, let me give you an example of what an inactive is, by the way. If you've ever swallowed and chewed a good old fashioned aspirin,
Yep.
it tastes almost metallic. It's
Yeah,
just,
I swallow them, but I don't chew them because they taste awful.
yeah, they taste like garbage. That's because one of the cheapest, most readily available, and most inert binders for medication is something called magnesium stearate. It's fundamentally magnesium. Not too bad for your digestion anyway, but it just tastes horrible going through your mouth. Tastes kind of metally. All right. So that's, if you ever want to know, well, what's a binder, chew an aspirin. That's a binder.
It tastes like metal powder.
Yep, that's magnesium stearate. So, and it's also used in a good number of others. Sugar spheres are another big contender because that makes everything taste sweet. If you've ever had a tablet, like I've got two young girls, and sometimes they take chewables and they're okay to chew them because they taste like berry or whatnot. Well, that's a lot of sugar spheres going into that flavor. But
Okay.
in any case,
Okay. Keep going.
okay. So in any case, when a company gets proficient at manufacturing these binders or manufacturing the APIs in bulk, companies they rarely have a single trading partner. Is my point. So they are on the open market trying to outbid, underbid their competitors for a share of the market, just like any other capitalist operation, any other free
Right.
enterprise. That's what you
Right.
do.
Supply, demand, price factor.
Ta-da! Yeah. Um, well, China
Yeah.
has a couple things going for it.
All right.
One is China is huge. China is a big landmass.
Yes.
With and that
Bigger
what
than
that
New Jersey.
yeah, bigger. Yeah, much bigger. They with that, what that means really in most cases around the world is that that large landmass covers multiple climates, which means there are a variety of things that are grown or deposited in the soil and can be mined out that you wouldn't find in Tunisia or
Right.
smaller other country, right? Because China covers this vast footprint, so they got vast changes in weather, changes in humidity, changes in
Anywhere from mountains to tropical to tundra to beach.
right, and this creates different a variety or a wide plethora of sources that they can draw from. They also have a huge workforce, massive workforce that they can deploy to whatever task they choose. Where there are certainly some indications and some, I'm not downplaying, I just don't know what the facts and the broad range statistics are. There are human rights violations. There are forced labor issues in China that we're doing our best to try to curtail as a country. I think that China's main uh, economic advantage is that they are government directed and government subsidized.
So they can produce possibly, if I want to put it this way, maybe more cheaply and maybe more efficiently than other, say, countries that are democratic republics.
They find it according to their system of government and the social structure that results from it, they have the ability to point massive amounts of resources at the task. Just to give you an example of what I was talking about, back in the 90s, I visited Hong Kong, China, and drove through the border town Shenzhen, which has grown quite a bit since I was there. I was witness growth pattern, and in the United States, in our economy, in our world, even though it's a public work, when we fix a highway or when we broaden a road, we'll close down a few miles worth and we'll put people to work at trying to do whatever the project is, to say expand the road by a lane. And then we'll close down another few miles. We'll try to reach it. It'll take forever. What I witnessed in Shenzhen was 65 miles of road shut down and no spare room on the side of people just digging and smoothing and working on the highway. I never saw that kind of mass effort anywhere in the world. It just the resources that were put into this was incredible, and they have the ability. The government and people in society have the ability to shift and point massive amounts of resources based on the government's direction.
We saw
We
the
wouldn't
same.
do that,
We
and we
saw
don't.
this. We saw the same kind of thing, I think, if it's reliable during COVID, when it says they amassed all the resources to build a new hospital and they built it in about 2 weeks.
Yeah, yeah, right. So the fact that they can then put their products on the market for almost unbeatably inexpensive price makes it very, very tempting, very, very hard, and almost a non-thought for other countries to go, well, yeah, I can buy it from a US source, perhaps whatever it is that we're talking about, or I can buy it for a fourth of the price from China. And even the logistics costs don't even come close to scratching the surface.
Right. Right. Now, two questions come to mind. One of those questions is, you know, so if it's not possible in the US to match that price, are there other countries in the world who are reasonable competitors to China? And my second question would be that some people would say China has been planning to have pharmaceutical dominance in the world for decades, and they are pursuing their agenda. So first one first, then the second one.
Okay, so the first one first was about other countries and can we go to them?
Are there other countries that are competitive that we could go to or that we can make competitive?
Well, the first question, 1A, is there are other countries that are trying to be competitive, but China has for 45, 50 years, since the Nixon administration, however long that is, has been building infrastructure. Their port system, their road system, their logistics equipment capabilities are not rivaled anywhere in either capability or size. So, I mean, just as an example, Japan's infrastructure is good. They're solid. They great port system. There's nothing wrong with anything at all. Except, but China's bigger. They just are bigger, and they always will be bigger. So what Japan can do, China can do 12-fold.
So despite that there may be Japan, the Philippines, Indonesia, there may be Brazil or, whatever to get pharmaceuticals from India, none of them can compete with China.
Well, yeah, and the fact of the matter is, if you go back to the original discussion we were having about the stages of development, India has prided themselves on their ability to produce finished dose form tablets, injectables, that kind of stuff, for inexpensive and for the taking. They are getting most of their source material from China
because
so
China has it, and China
right
can sell it for cheaper than anybody else.
and can produce it as much as you want. So, when you talk to a pharmaceutical purchasing agent, you go, well, where do you get your medication from? You get it from China. He goes, no, 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 I'm getting it from India. And you go, well, where's India getting it from?
Okay.
Because
And they're getting their pieces of the puzzle come from China. They may sell you the puzzle, but
right.
they're getting their building blocks from China.
And that's where when you pop out a statistic like, well, they own 85, 90% of the antibiotic market. Well, at the base level, yeah, they do.
Okay, now some people would be very concerned that China is developing an agenda. They're developing a plan because they want pharmaceutical dominance as well as all other kinds of dominance, manufacturing and blah blah blah. They want all kinds of dominance. And would you say it's been a specific agenda of their government to create pharmaceutical dominance?
This, again, I'll be very careful to repeat. What I'm going to offer up is my opinion based on my experience. I don't know what the Chinese government's agenda is. I just have an opinion from watching them.
You're not a CCP official.
No.
You're not in those meetings.
We're done here. No. No. I don't believe it to be an intentional agenda item. I don't. I think they have opened the world, their doors to a modified free economy, and they have benefited immensely from that. China is now home to billionaires than any other country in the world. And that's weird to say for a communist country.
Right, where everybody's the same. It's equity, right?
Yeah,
Everybody's the same in a communist country. That's the whole point of Marxism.
right. So, but they have had immense success in being able to point their controlled resources in a direction that benefits them immensely. Now, what they've done is either gone to other countries, it's not just the US, it's a lot of other countries, and invested, poured money in there. Mexico is up and coming. Mexico is in a great position, something you might have heard of in the news called nearshoring. The United States would dearly love to be able to bring a lot of its industry back from a strategic point of view, from a risk point of view. Let's not have to worry about logistics problems and port problems and bad actors in the global scene. How about, can we just like bring some of our industry back home? Okay, and some people go, yeah, well, that's a good thing to try. We should attempt that and see if we can set that up. But maybe if we just cut out the Pacific Ocean, you know, get keep it in North America maybe or something.
Or at least keep it in the Western Hemisphere.
Whatever, yeah, something like that. So Mexico has actually started to realize a bit of a boom from this sort of mentality. But the layer beneath that in the news is that I think it's a number like 85% of the commercial property in Mexico is partially owned by China.
Okay, so we still haven't escaped. Now,
Because they saw this coming. And like smart money, they go where the opportunity is. Why
like
wouldn't
any
you do
good
that?
businessman, they saw it coming and they said, we can make a strategic investment that's going to earn us a lot of money if we buy Mexico.
And this is not world domination. That's not the point. They're just looking to be successful at making money.
Okay, now do you, and I know I'm asking your opinion, but I'm asking your opinion as somebody who's been 40 years in pharma and supply chain. Is this a national security problem for the United States?
Under very specific circumstances, I can see where the scenario that could unfold, but I don't think the Chinese are. I don't think they're bad actors here. I don't. I think that if there's a fault to be looked at in retrospect, it's the American economy selling its soul. That's my judgment of it. You can't always go after the lowest bidder, and we have much to our detriment.
And have we done that because of insurance companies and big pharma and to always like we always need to find the lowest bidder to maximize big pharma profit. The cheaper they can supply this stuff and still charge this price, then it makes sense that they're going to buy cheap and sell high.
Well,
Is that
yeah, but
fair?
the general drive in business overall, and probably half of my career, I have directly managed the purchasing process for pharmaceuticals, and so every purchasing agent in the business wants to minimize the cost. That's what they're driven for. That's what they're rewarded on. Cut my cost 15%. Cut my purchasing budget by 12%. Cut.
Right.
And
It's just to enhance your bottom line. That's the whole point.
yeah,
Buy low and sell high.
right. So again, that's not a poor quality assessment. That's not some diabolical assessment. That's simply the way business is done. And in order to not do it that way, we have to be willing and able to reward companies for doing what we as consumers consider to be the right things. Pharmaceutical industry in the US is very, very hard to get through the insurance, the prescribers, the pharmacists, the insurance infrastructure, the distribution infrastructure to the manufacturer and go, here's how I want you to behave. And I'm willing to reward you with that with my dollars. Because your dollars, pharmaceutical companies don't sell to you. They sell to distributors.
Right.
I never sold any of the pharmaceuticals I was part of making directly to a patient. Now, it helps, and I've put these signs up. It helps for your workforce to understand that this isn't just a box of stuff. There are sick people who need this. And I've been in UPS facilities in Louisville that have a big banner. Every box is a patient, and they're right. That's the way to think about it. But in reality, there's so many layers that your dollars go through to get to. It's hard to control.
Right. So there's manufacturers, and then there's distributors, and then there's the retailers, and then there's the purchasers.
Mhm.
And so just because the price may be low here doesn't mean the price is going to be low here, because
Right,
it has to go through its stages.
right.
So what you're saying though is that there really is no way to create a supply line that does not include China.
Well, I didn't say that. I believe you probably could, and people are becoming disturbed enough that they are making those moves. China is it's very interesting because their media is controlled, and because their government is in control of what goes out. Every time I see a statistic coming out of China on like their GDP or on their trade numbers, things like that, I always have to scratch my head and go, does that make sense? Is that really real? Is that, am I getting the truth here? And last week, I was reading in one of the news sources I follow that said China has put a freeze on its international economic reporting. That kind of
But
was
you're not going to tell us.
it was sort of trending down for a few months. They've been losing ground in some of the key indicators, so they just pulled the plug. Nope, nope, no, nothing here.
Right. Right. Don't look at the man behind the curtain. No. So is it even a good idea to think about or to try to bring pharma back to our shores as the United States? I mean, is that just somebody who might in the street hold up a sign, bring pharma back to our shores? But is that even possible? And is it even a good idea?
It would be a huge process because at this point, the global supply chain for pharmaceuticals and the pharmaceutical industry is more like an ecosystem than an industry. I don't think you can shut out a player like China or India um, like that, and there would not be some sort of seismic ripples through the. I'll give you an example from another industry. Um, Plastics recycling. A few years back, decade and a half maybe. Um, we as a country, U.S. and Europe as well, were looking for what to do with their glut of plastic. And I think most people know by now that probably about 2/5 of the plastic that you throw in the garbage, only about 2/5 is recyclable. Most
Right.
of
The
it
rest
can't
ends
be.
up in a landfill anyway.
Right. So China was the first to raise their hand and go, "Hey, like, I'll play a Statue of Liberty for your garbage. Give me everything. Give me everything, and we'll process it in China, and we'll dispose of it, and we'll do this and we'll do that. And that's fine.
You
And
figured out how to put it in the back of the Back to the Future car.
yeah. Well, again, what they did, you can see video of people manually sorting through, manually shredding, which you can never get people to do that in Europe and the US. They just wouldn't do that. But that's what they did. Well, the problem is one of the problems with a global issue with garbage is that if it finds a place where it can go, every solution, landfills, incinerators, rockets to the moon, whatever, gets over that fast. So China got overwhelmed. They had ships backed up. People were like, "Hey, okay, here, you want the garbage, dude? I got garbage for you." And what in 2017, they were struggling. I mean, air quality, ground environment, water was terrible. So the government said, "All right, stop." 70% of the world's plastic recycling was en route to China. So they just kind of shuttered the doors. Bye, not here. Well, now all of a sudden you're seeing reports from Malaysia and from Thailand and other areas, other islands and areas in the where the ships just got diverted. And people are like, well, they won't see it. So they're shoveling it down in these makeshift landfills, and they're becoming polluted because you pulled the plug on China. So what I use that as an illustration for what I mean by an ecosystem. You can't just go take this massive player and go, all right, we're not doing business with you anymore. I think we got to, we have to work on terms. We have to work on how we do this and what we do. And it doesn't necessarily hurt to think about other sourcing, at least on a competitive basis. Back in the back in the early 2000s, the Chinese yam is used to create source material. There's a protein in the yam that closely mimics estrogen and triggers the human body to do a couple other interesting things once it's put in there. Of course, it has to be pure and it has to be sufficiently processed. It's been used for centuries as like a homeopathic remedy. But the problem with homeopathic is you're never sure what you're getting. So if you excite the right enzyme out of this yam, you get very effective medication. And of course, it's grown in China. Well, like most things, we talked earlier about environment. If you look at a globe and you draw, latitude lines around, those places probably have similar. So there was an attempt to transplant the Chinese yam. There's other names for the plant into the Caribbean. Fertile soil seemed like it was okay. There's volcanic, whatever. I don't know. I'm not a botanist, but anyway. And they got it running. They had a couple of good crops, and then there was some sort of blight, wiped it out. And they struggled with it for a while, but it seems theoretically possible to do this, create some competitive value. But again, you're talking about a size and a scale and an industry and an infrastructure in China that can not only grow this plant and get the chemistry done, but they can do it large scale, reliably, and very inexpensively. So they watched this happen over in Mexico and the Caribbean, and they're like, hey, that's adorable, actually. But they're not worried about it because trying to regrow an industry like that is not easy. Not easy.
All right. Now, I know you have a lot more to share with me. You could, I'm sure, talk for another hour. I can tell that. But we only have about 3 minutes left. So, you know, you know, what do you think is the best solution? If you were the king of the world and could create a dream, an ideal situation, what would that be in terms of pharmaceuticals and all that? I mean, bring it together for me, Rich.
Okay, I think that there isn't a clear silver bullet. I'm not that naive, and I don't think anyone else ought to be either. I think that we have to change the dialogue. I don't think isolation is the right idea. Certainly, bringing back some industry and reviving industries that have fallen apart is a good idea. I think that it would be dangerous to think about protectionism and isolationism. That never ever works. That's how the Chinese got into their mess in the first place. And I could give you another hour on all that, but I think we have to change the dialogue, and I think we have to think more about what not just we're going to get a cheap price for a product out of this country, but what is it that the country needs, and how can we negotiate in a win-win basis? And I don't think we've done enough of that. I think we've kind of, here's the money, give my stuff, and we're done. I think we need to have a more open relationship with them.
And is that possible?
I believe it is. It takes time, but I had a decent relationship with the Chinese national when I was in China back in the 90s. He was a hardcore entrepreneur. He was a very interesting guy. But the reason we got along is because from the first meeting, I treated him like a person, not like a vending machine. And I think that resonated with him, and I think it defined our relationship. And I don't know if I can't say it's universal. There are thousands of people doing business across national lines. Some of them are doing it well. Some of them are not. And I think we just have to get more careful and more thoughtful about how we do business with these folks and try to understand what serves our purposes and what it is we want and what it is they want so we can come to a good agreement on how
Thank
to.
you. Thank you. I can see we are out of time. I wish we had more time to talk, but maybe we can do a part two sometime. Anyway, I appreciate your time today, Rich.
Thank you, and it was a pleasure to join you.
Thank you very much.